טוב לי תורת פיך, טוב לי, טוב לי, טוב לי תורת פיך. Okay, we're live. Here we go. We're live. We're gonna have a nice shiur. We're gonna enjoy. There we go. Here we go. B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Shiur Torah. Baruch Hashem. Yishtabach Shemo la'ad. We're here in Jerusalem, learning Torah with you guys. Here it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. I know back where we live in the U.S., it's much earlier, so you guys can get to enjoy some sleep at some point later tonight. But BeEzrat HaShem, we're going to learn some very, very important things, BeEzrat HaShem, tonight that I highly doubt you ever heard before. And one of the reasons for that is because it's not being taught by most people unless you find it in the books, of course. The holy books have it. That's where everything we get comes from our Rabbeinu, Rav Efraim, and of course the holy books that have been with our people for thousands of years, Baruch Hashem. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Levana Bat Zarah, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Rav Efraim ben Shulamit, Avi Mori David ben Asriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Zora, and all of Al Yisrael, all of the righteous Noahides that continue to support our organization. Anyone that wants to help us continue doing the amazing things that the organization is doing, whether it's helping the soldiers get more tzitziot, or for Chanukah, or if you want to get some special blessings during the holidays, best way to do that is by supporting the Torah scholars at our kollel of Dayanut, and that you could all do on our website, BeEzratHashem.org, or you can go to the campaign, bhchesed.org, or any other way that you want to donate to our organization. There are plenty of ways to do that if you actually want to become a partner in all the amazing things that we do, Baruch Hashem. So with that being said, I want to start off with a question. Have you ever heard of a punishment that brings joy? A punishment, horrible, awful, terrible, atrocious, painful, disastrous punishment, but yet it brings joy. Well, Rabotai Karim, you're about to hear about the greatest punishment of all, and that will actually bring joy to the nations. And one of the extraordinary things that you're going to learn also is that this is a punishment that is not only something you've heard about, but perhaps you never knew that this punishment will bring joy. And I'm not talking about just joy for the Jewish people, but rather joy to the nations as well. What kind of punishment is this? BeEzrat HaShem na'aseh v'natzliach. Now, in the world today, of course, we have a lot of confusion, and one of the good things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, constantly teaches us in the Torah is that, as the Gemara says in Masechet Brachot in the last perek, in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Kol de'avid rachamana letav avid, everything that the Merciful One does is always for the best. So what does it mean it's always for the best? It doesn't mean that it's necessarily enjoyable to you the minute that he does it, but rather he always does the things that will have the best outcome. And one of the things that we're seeing as a result of this shock that's hit the Jewish world in the last couple of months, the massacre from these terrorists, Yimach Shimam V'Zichram, is the fact that many Jews around the world are waking up, are igniting that neshama that they have, and choosing to start reconnecting to their Judaism. And amazing stories from the survivors of the massacre, whether it's from the party with the several thousand people, hundreds of which were murdered and kidnapped, but of which still many survived with miraculous stories, or it's other people that survived. We're hearing many, many stories, and tonight we actually heard a story that is certainly unique We've heard a lot of stories. Each one is unique on its own, but the story that I heard today was from someone that heard it from the father of the two people. And there were two families. There are still two families, Jewish families living in Eretz Yisrael, that were very, very religious families. And these two families, Baruch Hashem, have Bnei Torah, learning Torah, but each family had a child that left the way, started becoming less and less religious. One of them had a boy that became less religious, started eating things that you're not allowed to eat, going to places you're not allowed to go, saying things you're not allowed to say, listening to things you're not allowed to listen to, and so on and so forth. And the other family had a girl that, in essence, did the same thing, started wearing immodest clothes. And the common denominator about these two young kids was they're around their same age, and they knew each other. And they also both decided that they still want to keep Shabbat. So everything else they pretty much abandoned, with the exception of Shabbat. But that was put up to the test, because they heard of the party from Gehenom that was the party during that massacre. And they decided that they don't want to miss out on this party, and they're going to go to the party. And they went to the party, and once the fun stopped and the shooting started instead, they were running for their life. But quickly they got captured by the terrorists. And they themselves say that the leader of these terrorist group, Hamas, Imach Shimam V'Zichram, that one of the people that was leading the group over there came to them, looked at both of them and said, "You two, I'm going to slaughter you with a knife." Both of them are hysterical, crying, petrified. What can you possibly say to such a vicious monster like this? What can you possibly say? And both the young man and the young girl are crying hysterical, and then the girl says to the boy, "You know that until now, all the sins we made, whether it's a not kosher, not modest, immorality, all the things we did, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave us. He gave us more time to do tshuva. He didn't punish us. But look, the first time we ever broke Shabbat, and He punished us on the first Shabbat that we broke." As soon as the young boy heard this, he started hysterical, crying much more than he did before, because he told her, "You're right. We are getting murdered right now. We're about to get slaughtered right now by this evil monster, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows him, because we violated the Shabbat that saves the Jewish people. It's not the Jewish people that are keeping Shabbat, it's the Shabbat that keeps them." As soon as they said this and they're both hysterical crying, the monster comes back and he says to them, "What'd you say?" And they say to him, scared to death, saying, "No, we're just saying that God is allowing this to happen because we violated Shabbat. We used to keep Shabbat. And this is the first time we ever violated Shabbat." And the monster says to them, "You keep Shabbat? I worked at a yeshiva for many years," says the monster from Hamas. "I worked at a yeshiva for many years. And Jews that keep Shabbat have a special light on their face. That's not the Jews that I'm looking to slaughter. Go, run away. I won't do anything to you. No one will touch you." And literally, a mere open miracle, no less than Kriyat Yam Suf, than the splitting of the ocean of reeds. These two kids got up, ran, and saved their life. Why did this happen? The moment they violated Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "You lost your right to exist." The moment they recognized the deen, they recognized the judgment, they brought mercy upon themselves from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they literally lived to tell the story. So we see that there are times where there's a punishment that can certainly bring joy, but the punishment that I'm telling you about that will bring the ultimate joy to the nations, ultimate joy to Am Yisrael, ultimate joy to everyone, is even bigger than that, Rabotai Karim. Now, one of the reasons why you haven't heard it until now, unless you've been studying all of our shurim throughout the years, unless you've been studying the Rishonim, unless you've been studying the Gemara, unless you've been studying a serious amount of Torah over the years, is because even if you've gone to yeshiva, even if you went to kollel, even if you were religious, unless you had a Rav that has an extraordinary amount of Yirat Shamayim alongside his Torah, you would have never heard it. Why? Says Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, almost 200 years ago, that at the end of days before Mashiach comes, many of the rabbis are going to be false leaders, bad shepherds, like Rav Wasserman already talked about 80 years ago. Akol kol Yaakov va'yadayim yidei Esav. They have the voice of Yaakov, but the hands of Esau, meaning they may say things that sound good. They may say things that sound holy, but in reality, they're working for Esau's team. And in this week's parasha, Yaakov Avinu cries out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atzileni na miyad achi miyad Esau, save me from my brother, save me from Esau. Esau, I know who he is. He's a vicious monster. He wants to kill me. Baruch Hashem, I can recognize who the enemy is. I could run, I could fight, if I have the weapons and the ability. But when he pretends to be my brother, he's much more dangerous. I need your help, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I need your help. So when you have different famous and non-famous so-called teachers telling you that learning about punishment is not the way of Torah, or don't focus on punishment, it's not good for you, God loves everyone, everyone's going to go to heaven no matter what they do because God loves you and He's merciful. These are the soldiers of Esau, sometimes with a beard and a hat, sometimes without. Sometimes they're Jewish, sometimes they're not. And a person that does not know how to recognize who is Esau and who is not is in much more danger than they could possibly imagine. So, who can we possibly learn from better than the Rambam, who brings the story of Avraham Avinu in a way unlike any other, about what is the way that Avraham Avinu changed the world and how that will ultimately teach us about the awesome punishment that will come at the end of days that will bring joy. This is not a shiur like my Gehenom shiur, all the gruesome details to people that die and go to Gehenom and get punished. No. This is very, very different. We're talking about a punishment unlike anything else you've ever heard of. This is a punishment that will bring joy. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds like an oxymoron. I know it sounds insane. But that's our holy Torah. Afoch ba de afoch ba de kula ba. Delve into it and delve into it because everything is in it. Says our holy Torah. The name of the Rambam in Hilchot Avodah Zarah. Hilchot Avodah Zarah in chapter 1, Halacha number 3. And I'm going to read it word for word in English to save the time. Where Avraham Avinu is talking about, where the Rambam talks about Avraham Avinu. He says, after this mighty man is a common expression that the sages use to talk about Avraham Avinu, to describe Avraham Avinu. Later on he mentions him by name, by Avraham, but here he calls him a mighty man. After this mighty man was weaned, he began to explore and think, though he was a child. He began to think incessantly throughout the day and night, wondering, how is it possible for the sphere to continue to revolve without having anyone controlling it? Who is causing it to revolve? Surely it does not cause itself to revolve. He had no teacher, nor was there anyone to inform him. Rather, he was mirrored in Ur Kasdim, among the foolish idolaters. His father and mother and all the people around him were idol worshippers, and he was worshipping with them. However, His heart was exploring and gaining understanding. Here we see the first step of somebody that wants to do tshuva, that wants to help other people to do tshuva. The first thing you have to make sure is that you or your potential friend or just person that you're trying to help them do tshuva, they have to use their mind. You can't spoon feed them everything. If they're not willing to learn, they will never change. Sometimes people tell me, listen, can you just tell me some type of skula that you can, that could help my parnasah, that it could help my awful marriage, that could help this and that? Yes, the best skula is do tshuva. That's the skula. No, but is there something easier without doing all these mitzvot? No. Why? Because without doing the mitzvot, the skula doesn't work. The blessings don't exist. Everything you're getting is a punishment, even if that means millions of dollars. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays his haters in this life. So the first thing that a person is required to do is to use their mind. And that's what Avraham Avinu was doing. Although he was surrounded by idol worshippers, and he himself was doing it with them, says the Rambam. He wasn't happy, he wasn't content with everything because it didn't make sense. The world is revolving, but who revolves it? This, by the way, as a side note, also shows that Avraham Avinu was much more clever than many of the people in this generation that think the world is flat. Ultimately, he appreciated the way, says the Rambam, he appreciated the way of truth and understood the path of righteousness through his accurate comprehension. He realized that there was one God who controlled the sphere, that he created everything, and that there is no other God among all the other entities. Here we see that the Rambam, as he does in other places in the Yad HaChazakah, recognizes that the world is a sphere and not a flat earth like some morons think. And many of them are even using mistranslations that they simply decide to translate. So the Rambam says that the world is a sphere, and that was actually one of the things that is causing a lot of people to become heretics. Not because it's heresy to believe the world is a flat, but rather because they make this whole notion and this whole so-called scientific debate their entire Torah. Forgetting the mitzvot, forgetting musar, forgetting halacha, forgetting Shabbat, forgetting Yom Tov, forgetting kavod l'chachamim, forgetting everything. Avraham Avinu realized that God controlled the sphere, and he created everything, and there's no other God among all the other entities. He knew that the entire world was making a mistake. What caused them to err was their service of the stars and images, which made them lose awareness of the truth. Here we see that Avraham Avinu not only recognizes that everyone is making a mistake and he's not afraid to stand up for the truth, even if nobody else will join him, but he realizes that one of the primary reasons of why people stay in their bad ways is because of the sins that they make. If you are looking to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, looking to change your life, but you're continuing to make sins against Hashem, guess what? You're not going to feel the holiness. If you kept Shabbat and you didn't enjoy it, it's usually because you're making bigger sins than you can imagine, whether it's immorality, promiscuity, intermarriage, you're stealing in your business, you have a potty mouth, all types of things that ruin the blessing. A person that steals something and uses it for a mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah. There's no such thing as a mitzvah coming in the way of sin. So many times people feel like they're not enjoying the Torah, they're not enjoying the learning, they're not enjoying the holidays, and not realizing that it's because of their sins. They could learn Torah and still feel disconnected from God. Why? Because some of the sins, such as immorality and idolatry, and needless to say heresy, disconnect you from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore the joy that you're supposed to get, the spiritual fulfillment you're supposed to get, doesn't come. Avraham Avinu knew the world was making a mistake, and that's what caused them to err, was that they continued servicing these stars and images. Avraham was 40 years old, says the Rambam, when he became aware of his Creator. Now, the Gemara says that Avraham started this journey when he was 3 years old. And he continuously learned more and more about the creation without a teacher, and ultimately became Avraham when he was 40. He was 40 years old when he became aware of his creator, when he recognized and knew him. He began to formulate replies to the inhabitants of Ur-Kasdim and debate with them, telling them that they were not following the proper path. Here we see the second step. Once a person uses their mind and they recognize the truth, they see that the Torah is the truth, it's the only divine book that God gave us. They realize that there's only one God and he does not have pieces, he doesn't have brothers, and he certainly doesn't have any long-haired guy that became his son through his prostitute mother, and needless to say, he does not change his prophecies and start new religions that the Muslims want to teach you. There's only one truth, and that's the truth that's from the Torah. Everything else is falsehood. Now, once a person recognizes that the Torah is the only truth that exists, he has to follow the path of Avraham. What did Avraham do? He did not keep this to himself. He started publicizing it. He started publicizing it and debating the foolish people around him to show them that they're going in the wrong path. Why? Because one of the ways that a person can show their gratitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, their fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, their love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is by publicizing his name. By publicizing his name. He broke their idols and began to teach the people that it is fitting to serve only the God of the world. To him alone is it fitting to bow down, sacrifice, and offer libations, so that the people of the future generations would recognize him. Conversely, it is fitting to destroy and break all the images, lest all the people err concerning them, like those people who thought that there are no other gods besides these images. See, here we see that Avraham Avinu takes the third step. He uses his mind to identify the truth. He publicizes the truth. And then he starts breaking the idols. He starts fighting heresy, fighting idol worship, without a fear of anything. Why? Because he knows that the only way that he can bring people to the truth is by fighting the evil to the extent where he will help these people do what David HaMelech says, Su mera ve'aseh tov. Flee from evil and do good. Before you focus on doing good, whether it's charitable gifts, or it's prayers, or it's learning, or all the wonderful things that you can do, realize that it's even more critical to stop doing the bad things. Stop stealing, stop desecrating God's name, stop worshiping an idol, stop worshiping men, stop worshiping women, stop worshiping money. Stop the evil, stop the immorality, stop the thievery. That is more critical than even doing good. That's why after publicizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, Avraham Avinu went straight to fighting against the heresy and the idolatry of his day. And then the Rambam continues and says, when he overcame them through the strength of his arguments, the king desired to kill him. This is Nimrod. And Avraham was saved through a miracle and left for Haran. There he began to call in a loud voice to all the people and inform them that there is one God in the entire world and it is proper to serve him. He would go out and call to the people, gathering them in city after city and country after country until he came to the land of Canaan, modern-day Israel, proclaiming God's existence the entire time. As the Torah says in the book of Genesis, chapter 21, verse 33, and he called there in the name of the Lord, the eternal God. Here we see that Avraham Avinu uses his mind, publicizes HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, breaks the idols to fight evil, and then starts teaching the people to do good, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do mitzvot. And what followed was a disaster. How is it a disaster? I publicized your name, God. I went and I told people about you. Avraham didn't ask these questions. People ask this question every day. They say, wait a minute, I don't understand. I left the bad things. I started doing good. I started observing Shabbat. I started being honest in my business. I started protecting my brit. Started doing good things. And now all of a sudden I'm having money problems. I'm having issues. People are saying bad things about me. Aren't I supposed to get rewarded for this stuff instead of punished? That's the test. That's the test, says Avraham Avinu. That's the test, says the Torah. After Avraham Avinu publicized HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, he fights idolatry, he teaches people to do good things, problems come. Problems come. Nimrod throws him into a fire. But because Avraham Avinu withstands the test and does not become an idol worshiper, does not fall for that trap of the Satan, what happens? A miracle happens. Just like these two kids recognized the judgment of heaven, that the only reason why they were about to be slaughtered is because they violated the holy Shabbat, that brought the miracle. And after that miracle, what happened after that miracle? That miracle was the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu used the bad, what looked like a punishment, in order to elevate Avraham Avinu's name greater than ever before, where he was now able to not just preach to a few local people, but rather he was now going from place to place, country to country, preaching out God's name in a loud voice without being scared of anything, and people following him by the herds. Millions of people are following Avraham Avinu all of a sudden. HaKadosh Baruch Hu elevates your name to become even bigger after you withstand these tests. Why? He uses this, what looks to be a tragedy, what looks to be a problem, a financial crisis, a health crisis, all types of crises, to test you, to see if you really are a tzaddik, if you really did mean it when you said that you believe in God, if you really do mean it that you are going to follow God through thick and thin. When you said it in your debates with people, when you said it in your lectures, when you said it in your Shulchan Shabbat, in your discussions, you told people to flee evil, you told people to go away from heresy, go away from idolatry, you said all types of nice things. Hashem says, okay, let's see if you really mean it. He gives you the test. He makes it look like as if a tragedy is about to happen. Why? In order to see if you would stand the test, because if you do, now you are worthy of a miracle to happen for you, which Hashem will use to elevate your name to much bigger places than you could ever possibly imagine. Because now that the world sees the miracle, it becomes a sanctification of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. It becomes a Kiddush Hashem. Now everyone wants to be next to you. Look, I don't know what he says. All I know, everything is good with him. What do you mean? Didn't he just have a disease? Didn't he almost die? Didn't he lose all of his this? Didn't he? Yeah, but it all worked out. Not only worked out, he became rich again. He became this. He's healthy. He's not. What? How? He was just a year ago, he was dying. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Okay, let's go to shiur. Let's go to shiur. What, a guy that miracles happen? Who doesn't want to be next to a person that miracles happen? HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses these tests, these seemingly disasters, in order to test us and thereby elevate us if we would stand the test. Just like he did with Avraham Avinu. Therefore, says the Rambam, when the people would gather around him and ask him about his statements, he would explain to them, to each one of them according to their understandings, until they turned to the path of truth. And ultimately thousands and myriads gathered around him. These are the men of the house of Avraham. Here we see that Avraham Avinu never thought, oh, because I know the truth, therefore I'm better than you. He spoke to everybody in their level. You're a beginner, I'll speak to you in beginner level. You are more elevated, you're more learned, I'll speak to you on your level. That's what the real Tzadikim can do. One of the greatest things that Arav Ovadiah Yosef, alav Shalom, left to our generation. One of the greatest things, and this is not just my opinion, this is the opinion of Gdolei Ador. Everyone knows that his Yabia Omer series that he wrote is something that the world has never seen before. But they don't consider that the gift. This was unbelievable. This is great sages from all walks of life. Ashkenazi, Chabad, Litvish, Sephardi, everyone, that even the country, the Zionist country of Israel, gave him an award for it. That's how great Yabia Omer is. But when some of Gdolei Ador saw the last book that Rabbi Ovadiah wrote, which is called Anaf Etz Avot, commentary on the Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, a little over 700 pages, commentary on each Mishnah, full of stories, full of chidushim. Theoretically speaking, not as, extraordinary wisdom as what he showed in his responses of Yabia Omer or Ilchot Olam, all the other writings the psaks that he gave. It looked like a book of stories and wonderful things, but it's not the same. You wouldn't think this is like the biggest genius in the world wrote this if you didn't know. But that's the genius. That's what Gdolei Ador says. How could somebody that's so much higher than the rest of the world in knowledge, in wisdom, in spirituality, in good, in every single aspect you can possibly imagine, lower himself to fit the generation and leave us a gift? What's this gift? This is a gift to every single person that wants to know basic level of Musar and more. This is a gift to anyone that wants to be a speaker and teach the public. You don't have to think anymore. Arav Ovadiah Yosef already thought everything for you. All you have to do is get a crowd and read exactly word for word of what he says, and you're finished. Why? He did all the thinking for you. And don't think for a moment you can think better than him. The extraordinary commentary that he wrote on Anaf Etz Avot was literally a gift that he was leaving the generation after. He left this world because he knew that there's a lot of heretics out there that pretend to be Yaakov but really are Esau. He says, you want to know the basic foundation of belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? This is it. You want to go speak to the people? Want to do Kiruv like I did? He says. Rabbi used to give 7 lectures every Shabbat. 7 lectures just on Shabbat. The Rabbanit says she never saw him sleep on Shabbat. All the years she was with him. Never saw him sleep once. Rabbi would give lectures every day, especially during the Yamim Noraim, during Elul. They would fly him in a helicopter from place to place just to make time. He would fill up stadiums worth of people. Countless people did tshuva because of his extraordinary lectures. He turned regular balabatim, regular people, into people that knew Torah, and their children became all the rabbis of today. Some of the biggest rabbis in the world are Talmidim of Rav Ovadiah. He says, you want to go speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children? You want to continue building on this extraordinary Torah empire that's been built over the last 100 years or so around the world, both in the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi community that Rav Ovadiah contributed an extraordinary amount to? Go ahead. Take this book, Anaf Etz Avot, read word for word, and you'll see how the truth of the Torah melts people's hearts. Even though sometimes he talks about Gehenom, even though sometimes he talks about punishment, even though sometimes he talks about things that are not necessarily the topic of discussion on every Shulchan Shabbat, unfortunately. Do you know why? Because that's the truth. That's the truth. There are entire Mishnah just about Gehenom. There's entire Mishnah about punishment. There's entire Mishnah about reward. Entire Mishnah about Torah learning and so on. He didn't skip anything. And here we see that he's following the same path of Avraham Avinu, where initially Rav Ovadiah Yosef was so poor and nobody wanted to marry him. When his sons asked him, how come you got married so late? You got married when he was 24, 26 years old, when you tell us that we have to get married at 18, 19 years old. Rav Ovadiah says to them, what can I do? We were so poor in those days, and there was such disrespect to Torah scholars, nobody wanted to marry me until your mom, she helped me and she caught me. She got me. She had everyone out there rich people, successful people, they all wanted her. But she wanted a Torah scholar. And she got me. How Ovadiah spoke so highly of his dear Rabbanit, how she helped him as a few. How much real love was between them. And this very dear Tzadikah has the greatest place in Olam Haba, as she's a partner in all of his Torah. Now, Avraham Avinu, Rabotai Karim, says the Rambam, after this miracle happened, where he passed the test, HaKadosh Baruch Hu elevated his name, and people would gather around him and ask him all types of questions, and he would answer each one of them according to their level. He planted in their heart this great fundamental principle, composed texts about it, taught it to Yitzchak his son. Yitzchak also taught others and turned their hearts to God. He also taught Yaakov and appointed him as teacher. The Zohar Kadosh in Parashat Vayera asks, what did Avraham teach people that made them choose to do tshuva, choose to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and abandon idolatry? He taught them about reward and punishment. He taught them about the details of Gehenom. That's what the Zohar Kadosh says. And he taught this to his children and his grandkids. And ultimately Yaakov taught this to others and turned the hearts of all those who gathered around him to God. He also taught this to all of his children. And he selected his son Levi and appointed him as the leader. He established him as the head of the academy to teach them the way of God and observe the mitzvot of Avraham. Yaakov commanded his sons that the leadership should not depart from the descendants of Levi, so that the teachings would not be forgotten. This concept proceeded and gathered strength among the descendants of Yaakov and those who collected around him, until there became a nation within the world which knew God. When the Jews extended their stay in Egypt, however, they learned from the Egyptians' deeds and began worshipping the stars as they did, with the exception of the tribe of Levi, who clung to the mitzvot of the patriarchs. The tribe of Levi never served false idols. And within a short time, the fundamental principle that Avraham had planted would have been uprooted, and the descendants of Yaakov would have returned to the errors of the world and their crookedness. Because of God's love for us, and to uphold the oath he made to Avraham, our patriarch, he brought forth Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher, the master of all prophets, and he sent him to redeem the Jews. After Moshe Rabbeinu prophesied and God chose Yisrael as his inheritance, he crowned them with mitzvot and informed them of the path to serve him, teaching them the judgment prescribed for idol worshippers and all those who stray after it. What does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu got everyone to do tshuva at Mount Sinai, got them to do tshuva and accept the Torah by teaching them judgment? Says the Likutei Sichot in volume 20, Moshe Rabbeinu taught Am Yisrael about punishment for idol worshippers, punishment for enemies of God, the details of Gehenna, the details of punishment. And that made them change their ways. Why? Why, says the Likutei Sichot? Because although man can appreciate the futile nature of idol worship and the greatness of God with his own intellect, because man is fallible, it is necessary to have these principles institutionalized in an objective, unchanging religious code. In so many words, human nature requires us to know about punishment. It's not a coincidence that the most religious people in the world are typically people that have endured a lot of suffering. Poor people, people that have had sicknesses. It's not coincidental that the three major religions in the world, whether it's, of course, the truth of Judaism, or it's the heresy of Islam, or idolatry of Christianity, still, the Rambam says that these two other religions were a kindness from God in order to bring the nations closer to the truth. Even though they're not in the truth yet, they're closer to the truth. What common denominator is there between all three religions? What common denominator? If you say Yoshke, say Jesus, it's not a common denominator. Even though Islam believes that Jesus was alive and they say good things about him, obviously Judaism does not say anything good about Jesus. Quite the opposite. If you say that they're all monotheistic, that's not necessarily true. Why? Because Christianity, according to both Judaism and Islam, is considered 100% idol worship. They divide God into three. They believe that God impregnated a woman of flesh and blood, all types of stupid things. So that cannot be the common denominator. Is it the mitzvot? No, only Judaism has these mitzvot of eating kosher. Even though Islam has halal, it's similar but not the same. And Christianity has none of that. If you say don't eat pig, only Judaism and Islam has that. In Christianity, you're allowed to eat anything you want, anything that moves or doesn't move, because they have forsaken all of the commandments. If you say, oh, maybe it's because don't murder, even though we obviously see that the people of Islam don't exactly follow that, the reality is this is not really a religious thing. Meaning, it's not unique to these three religions, because even the Noahites, the rest of the people that are not part of Islam or part of Christianity or part of Judaism, also have the same rule, which is the rule for Noahites. Technically, all Gentiles, including Islam and Christianity, are considered Noahites. Whether they're righteous Noahites or wicked Noahites is a different story. But one of the Noahide laws is do not murder, do not worship idols, do not commit adultery. So what is the common denominator that the Rambam is talking about that brought these, that caused the Kadosh Baruch Hu to bring these two technically false religions, but yet that was a kindness from God? Do you know what the common denominator is? I'll tell you. Nobody ever told you, but I'll tell you for free. You know what the common denominator is? All three religions, at their root, at their truth, at their pure form, teach extensive information about reward and punishment. That is the common denominator. When you speak about Gehenna, Jews that are Torah learned, Jews that actually know Torah and weren't manipulated by all types of Amaleks and Esavs that pretend to be teachers, pretend to be rabbis, Jews that are Torah scholars, they hear the word Gehenna, they start shaking. They hear punishment, they start shaking. Why? This is a common thought in their everyday life, because it's part of our 13 principles of faith. If a Jew does not believe in reward and punishment, he's not considered a kosher Jew. He's considered an apikos, a heretic. If you go to a Muslim that's actually religious, and you tell him Jahannam, that Muslim will be scared. He doesn't want to go. He knows Jahannam is fire, it's horrible, it's terrible, bad people go there. The kafir goes there, the kofir, the heretic goes there. One of the top discussions that they learn about, even if they don't know anything else about Muhammad and the rest of the nonsense they teach over there, they all know about Jahannam. All of them. With no exception. Cannot be considered a Muslim without knowing about Gehenna. And guess what? The same goes for the Christians. Christians, Catholics, all the denominations, same exact thing. You tell them hell, you tell them Gehenna, all of the other different names, purgatory, they all know exactly what you're talking about. They'll even give you details of what they learned in their churches. That's their primary topic of discussion, because if you don't believe in their Yoshke, that's it. That's where you go. In fact, they even believe their own Yoshke went there and got out. The only difference is the Jews believe he went in there and he never got out. But that's a different story for a different day. But every religious Christian knows about hell, knows about Gehenna, as much as he knows about Isaiah 53, Daniel 9. It's one of the fundamentals of their religion. That if you don't want to go there, you have to believe in their religion according to them. Obviously this is falsehood, nonsense, but the point being is, it's still the only real common denominator between these three religions. Why? Says the Lekutei Sichot, which is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu made people. We must know about reward and punishment in order for us to operate as human beings. In order for us to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We must know there has to be a reward and a punishment. This is the reason why all heretics, all atheists, all anti-God people, their primary reason for hating religion is punishment. Primary reason for hating religion, regardless of what religion it is punishment. Whether it's punishment in this world, bad things happening to people, or bad things happening in the next world. That's the primary thing they all hate, common denominator. Without knowing and believing in punishment, a human being cannot connect to God. Because you need to know where it all comes from, on the good side as well as the bad side. And if you give the power to the Satan, that means you believe in a different God. Satan is just simply an angel, a soldier of God. He does certain jobs. He doesn't have a power independent of God. Anyone that believes that Satan has power independent of God, as if he beat God, that's idol worship. That's also another reason why Christianity has idolatry in it. But the point being is, Rabotai, we see from here that Avraham Avinu changed the world with his Kiruv strategy, his outreach strategy, by simply teaching people about punishment. In Anaf Etzavot by Rabbi Ovadiah, on his commentary on Mishnah, chapter 5, Mishnah number 2, he brings the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 108a, saying, why was the generation of the flood, the time of Noach, why was it punished? And you could say, as we learned from the Zohar and the Gemara and other places, they made all the different sins, whether it's murder, or it's incest, or it's LGBTQ, or it's wasting seed. It's a whole slew of sins, stealing. Yes, but the Gemara says, they made those sins for a long time. They made those sins for a long time. What made them simply lose their right to exist? Says the Gemara, the generation of the flood became haughty and wicked only because of the abundance of good that the Holy One, blessed be He, bestowed upon them. As it's written for the prophet Yov in chapter 21, verse 9 to 13, their houses are at peace from fear, and the staff of God is not upon them. They raise their voices with the drum and the harp, and they rejoice to the sounds of instruments. They exhaust their days with goodness and their years with pleasantness. And this is what caused them to say to God, depart from us. We do not wish to know your ways. Here we see Rabotai Karim. When Rabbi Akiva says that the generation of the flood have no share of the world to come, they're an eternal Gehenna. Why was this the case? How did they get to be such bad people? Simple. They were ungrateful to all the good that God bestowed upon them. Life on earth was perfect. Everyone was healthy. No one was sick. Everyone stopped aging as far as their body, at the age of 20. Everyone looked like they were 20 years old, even if they were 700 years old. Everyone had money. Poverty wasn't a problem. The affluence, the longevity, the health, the abundance in the world was to such an extent that it was always perfect weather, says the Midrash Rabbah. There was always perfect weather. Life was heaven on earth. And instead of appreciating God for all the good that He gave us, what did they do? Said, we don't need you. We already have everything. When you judge us, you want to punish us, reward us. No, we already have enough. There they lost their right to exist. There is when they corrupted their ways and started stealing, murdering, committing adultery, idolatry, and everything else under the sun, and lost their right to exist. Ultimately, when they made the immorality a standard, that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. But it all started with their lack of gratitude. And the lack of gratitude was because they did not want punishment, they did not want any type of consequence. Now, Rabotai Karim, we have extraordinary sages, more than all of the other nations combined. And our extraordinary sages commented on every single thing in the Torah. But perhaps you read this prayer every day when you pray Mincha, or when you pray Shachrit, or when you just simply read Tehillim, and you didn't recognize. We're talking about the Tehillim that I've spoken about in the past, Tehillim number 67, Psalm number 67. The one where it's a skula to read it like the shape of a menorah, which is certainly a very good skula for a lot of good things, parnasah, all types of shefa. We, Baruch Hashem, got a few parchments that some people asked for because they want to read it from a parchment because it's an extra level of holiness to read it from a parchment. Either way, if you can't read it from a parchment, you read it from your siddur in the shape of a menorah. But the point is that this is a psalm written by David HaMelech. But it's not just any psalm. It's a psalm that talks about the end of days. It's a psalm that David HaMelech gives us some insight. Which says, Lamenatzech beneginot mizmor shiur. For the conductor with string music, a psalm, a song. Elohim yechanenu v'yivachenu. God favor us and bless us. Yair panav itanu sela. May He shine His countenance with us forever. Ladat ba'aretz darkecha. To make known in the world your way. Bekol goim yeshuatecha. Among all the nations your salvation. Yeducha amim Elohim. Will thank you, the nations will thank you, O God. Yeducha amim kulam. The nations will thank you, all of them. Yismechu v'yiranenu leumim, ki tishpot amim isho. They will rejoice and sing for joy, the nations. For you will judge the nations justly, and the nations on earth, uleumim ba'aretz tanchem sela, and the nations on earth, you will guide forever. Yeducha amim Elohim. The nations will thank you, O God. Yeducha amim kulam. The nations will thank you, all of them. Eretz natna yevula. The earth gave its produce. Yivachenu Elohim Eloheinu. The Lord may bless us, our God. Yivachenu Elohim. God may bless us. V'iru oto kol afsei haaretz. And fear of Him. All at the end of the earth. Meaning there will be fear of God across the earth. What is this? What is beautiful Tehillim saying? What is it saying here? It's saying, Rabotai Karim, if you didn't pay attention, it's saying something very special. It's saying that there's going to come a day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name is going to be spread everywhere. It's saying there's going to come a day that all the nations will recognize the one and only God. When are they going to recognize him? When? When are they going to recognize him? They're going to recognize him. They're going to sing for joy. They're going to rejoice. When? Yoducha amim Elohim, yoducha amim kulam. When? When are all these nations going to recognize God and thank him? Yismechu, this is in chapter 67, verse number 5. Yismechu v'iranenu. Leumim, the nations will rejoice and sing for joy. Ki, because, tishpot amim misho, because you will judge the nations justly. What? Because you will judge them, therefore they will be joyful? When was the last time you went to a court hearing and got a judgment and became joyful, even if you won? And does everybody win? Are all the idol worshippers going to win? Are all the enemies of Am Yisrael going to win? How is it that all the nations are going to be joyful at this judgment? And this judgment that it's talking about is a harsh judgment. A harsh judgment that comes at the end of days. How is this harsh judgment going to bring joy? Says the Metzudot David commentary on Psalm number 67, verse number 5. The nations will be happy when they see the judgment. Means to say, when they see the awesome punishment that you, Hashem, will give precisely based on each action, they will be happy for it. When the nations see the punishment that you give to each idol worshiper, the punishment you give to each heretic, the punishment you give to each enemy of Am Yisrael, the punishment you give to each liar, to each thief, to each evil person, to each anti-God person, that will bring them joy. Why? Because now they will know the one and only God, and they won't have to question who is God anymore, because the one and only God doesn't accept lies or liars. And if that wasn't enough, the Radak says, and when you judge the nations, exactly commentary on this, hundreds and hundreds of years ago the Radak writes this, and when you judge the nations who come with Gog. What's Gog? Gog is the leader of the last war at the end of days. This is a description that he's given. Doesn't necessarily need to be his birth name. Says the Radak HaKadosh, when you, Hashem, judge the nations who come with Gog, meaning they're in his army, they join him. The rest of the nations, meaning the ones that didn't join him, the rest of the nations will recognize you and thank you because you possess the power and the strength, and you are the master of the world, and everyone will thank you, even those who escaped the camps of Gog alive. As it's written, with them I put on them my sign, says Hashem. Here the Radak elaborates on the Metzudot David. Metzudot David said, the nations will become happy when they see God's wrath. David HaMelech is talking about a time where the fear of God will be everywhere. The Radak puts everything in perspective, consolidates everything, and says, this is talking about now, the end of days. Whether the last war is tomorrow or in 20 years from now is irrelevant. Because the end of days, the series of wars of Gog and Magog, is a series of wars. Certainly, it started. When it's going to be finished, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. He's simply giving us time to do tshuva. But what's going to make everybody happiest? Most people say, oh, Mashiach came. Yeah, but what about it? This, Rabotai. When everybody hears about the prophet Zechariah, chapter 14, where he says 2/3 of the world will be destroyed, what's going to happen with the last third? They also will be tested. And those among them that survive, they'll be screaming for joy. They'll be happy. Why? What are they happy about? What are they so happy about? Just 2/3 of all just died. How are you happy? This is what they're happy about. Says the Radak, when you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, judge the nations at this time, at the end of the world, at the end of days, those nations that come with the ultimate enemy, Gog, and the rest of the nations that join this Gog, everyone will recognize that it's God fighting. Everyone will recognize that it's God is defeating Gog. God himself is going to destroy the enemy. God himself is going to punish each and every single sinner that did not do tshuva. Everyone will see this, not just the Jewish people. Everyone will see this, to the extent that even those that were among the camps of Gog and escaped from it last minute alive, they will also recognize it. And even Gog and those that are the enemies, everyone will recognize it. There will be no exception there. In fact, even those that are punished will recognize the greatness of God and will be joyful for it. Why? Because they will know that you possess the power and the strength. You are the master of the world, and everyone will thank you. Meaning, both those that survive and those that are destroyed, because the recognition of the indisputable, one and only God, once and for all, is enough of a reason to live. Of course, it's much better to live forever and be in heaven because you are righteous, but the greatness of God at that day is going to be so extraordinary that everyone is going to be ecstatic at how HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wrath and power and punishment is delivered on the world in precision, no mistakes. Those that were heretics, idolaters, atheists, thieves, liars, whatever it was, every single person out there will know exactly what they did, and they'll be judged for it. And when the world sees such precision of the judgment, there will never be a dispute about the greatness of God, the glory of God, the ultimate control of God, and the knowledge of God. No one will ever even think that there's a power outside of God. No idol, no person, no cow, no ideology. The whole world will know. En od milvado. There is nothing else but Him. That knowledge will bring the ultimate joy. Because even though there's going to be a lot of wrath around people, the knowledge that it's God that's doing it will bring the ultimate joy to people. Because they know that there's no mistakes that are going to be made here. Whatever you cooked, that's what you're going to eat. No one will think, oh, no, it's not fair. No such thing. No one's going to think, oh, no, I didn't do it. No such thing. Everyone will know that whatever you did, there's going to be a judgment for it. You did terrible things, there's a judgment. You did good things, there's also judgment. No one will shortchange you. All the good that you did, you'll be rewarded for it. You said Shema Yisrael, you'll get rewarded for it. You gave tzedakah to publicize Hashem's name, like Avraham Avinu, like the Rambam, like Ovadiah, like all the greatest Jews that ever lived, you'll get rewarded for it. This, Rabotai, is the punishment that will bring the ultimate joy. Because this is how Kadosh Baruch Hu created us. We were created in such a fashion as human beings that we need to know that there is a reward and punishment in order to connect to God. We need to know that there is someone that owns this, There's someone that runs this. There is a rule. There is a consequence. When we do not want to follow the rules, the first thing that we forsake is consequence. We don't want consequence, and therefore we say there cannot be consequence. Why? Because there's no rules. But once HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows His wrath on those that forsook His rules, those that forsook His holy Torah, those that went to idolatry and heresy, those that publicized things against the Torah, those that manipulated the Torah in order to fit their agenda, in order to publicize their own name instead of the name of God. Once the precise judgment of God is brought unto the world, there will never be another question about God's majesty over the world and His knowledge of your thoughts. To such an extent, Rabotai Karim, that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, with the need to know reward and punishment in order to connect to Him, thereby the three major religions in the world have this as the common denominator. When this is finally common knowledge in the world, Rabotai Karim, even though there's dead bodies and disasters and horrible things, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one and His name is one. There's no Jesus, there's no Muhammad, there's no other type of idol that people make up. There's only God. All of the idolatry of Christianity, garbage. All of the heresy of Islam, garbage. The one and only God that says it in the Torah, that spoke to Am Yisrael at Mount Sinai, brings His wrath to the world, and that will bring joy. That will bring joy to everyone. Because now we know we can't make any mistakes. We stuck to God that spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai, who told him that I don't change. I'm not a human that I will change my mind. What I tell you now is forever. The Torah will always be the truth. It can never change. There is no new covenant. There's no new change. The only truth is the Torah. The Jews have to follow the laws of the Torah for Jews. The Gentiles have to follow the laws of the Torah for Gentiles, the Noahide laws. Everything else is man-made and is against God. You stuck with that truth throughout your life, or even if you didn't start off that way, you changed and you did tshuva, you repented, you abandoned heresy, you abandoned idolatry, you abandoned everything else. You were born a non-religious Jew, but now you became a religious Jew before all this happened. You were born a idol worshiper, a heretic, or some otherwise, but you did tshuva and now you followed the ways of God according to the Torah. That day will be the greatest day that you will ever have on this planet. Why? Because that neshama of yours that yearns the knowledge of God, which is based on a foundation of reward and punishment, will finally get to see reward and punishment while you're still in human form. You'll get to see the wrath of God. You'll get to see the truth of God. You'll get to see the precision of God. You'll get to see that there is no other God. There is no other belief. There is no middleman. There is no three parts of God. There's only one God. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, Israel, Hashem is our God. Hashem is one. This will become a knowledge. And when that neshama of yours experiences this, the ultimate joy that a human could ever feel will be felt. That's what David HaMelech tells us here. And he's not just speaking to the Jews. He's speaking to everyone. That's why he says the nations. Those among you that are Jewish, tshuva is the only decision that you should make right now. Everything else is irrelevant. Those among you that are not Jewish, also tshuva, for you, has to be made. You have to abandon all heretical beliefs, all idolatry, if you want to be one of those people that's going to enjoy the truth of God forever. This, Rabotai, is something that we look forward to, because we want there to be not just a truth, because we already have the truth, but rather a truth where nothing else exists. There is no more lies, there's no more heresy, there's no more idolatry, there's no more fakers, there's no more people speaking against the Torah or manipulating it. Just truth. This is a day we look forward to. This is a day that we will celebrate. Thank you for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of you just enough to give you the ability, the wherewithal, the understanding and clarity to make the right decision to go and serve the one and only God of Israel, the one and only God of our Torah, and abandon everything else that speaks otherwise. Kol Tuv, Bracha v'Atzlacha. We'll learn again together tomorrow.
אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל אשר יפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכרו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הגדילו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.